So what we've said is that the difference between Keynesian and neoclassical economists is that neoclassical economists believe in the power of free markets. And what they believe is that under the right circumstances, an economy can self-stabilize from some sort of shock. So let's suppose, so if we go back to that, that line that we drew when we examined the Nehru, we said, let's suppose that here we have 0% unemployment, and here we have 90% unemployment. So let's imagine, to start with, that we have really, really high levels of unemployment. How is it that an economy might self-stabilize from that point? So what we said is that over here, so the Nehru, remember, is here somewhere in the middle. We said it could be as low as 4%, it could be as high as 12%, but eventually that's the point at which the power of firms and workers are balanced. So over here, workers are they're not in a powerful position. What's going to be happening is, with unemployment that high, what's going to be happening is that real wages are going to be pushed down. So there's a decrease in wages. As a result of which, there's going to be a decrease in firms' costs. With unemployment being so high, there's a lot of competition between firms, so they're going to be looking to try to win customers. So if their costs go down, what they're likely to want to do is to decrease their prices, which will decrease the price level across the economy as a whole. And as we know from AD, when we studied it earlier, a decrease in the price level should lead to an increase in aggregate demand, an extension in aggregate demand. And we said there are three reasons for that. And we said, firstly, there was what we called the real balance effect. Because prices are lower, the real value of household savings is greater, therefore they've got more spending power. Secondly, we said there is the trade effect. With a decrease in the UK price level, what's likely to happen is that exports are going to rise and imports are going to fall because UK goods and services are more competitive. And thirdly, there's the real money supply effect. In the same way as the value of household savings has gone up, the value of cash that banks are holding is also greater. Effectively, the money supply, the amount of liquidity of banks is greater, and what that's going to do is reduce interest rates, which will then, again, increase aggregate demand. So what we're saying is there is an automatic process, that when unemployment is very high, that should lead to a reduction in real wages, that reduces costs, that reduces prices, and a reduction in the price level is likely to increase aggregate demand. Over here, as aggregate demand increases, that increase in aggregate demand, what that's going to do is it's going to lead to a decrease in unemployment. The economy is going to move to a lower level of unemployment. And it's going to continue to fall, unemployment, as long as real wages are falling and this process is continuing. And real wages are falling as long as workers are in a weak position. In other words, as long as unemployment is above the Nehru, unemployment will fall towards it. Over here, the reverse is going to be true. Unemployment's really low, real wages are going to be rising, that's going to increase firms' costs, that's going to increase the price level, and that's going to lead to a decrease in aggregate demand for the reverse reasons that we can see there. Because aggregate demand is falling, unemployment's going to rise. So over here, where workers are weak, wages are being pushed down, that reduces costs and the price level, which increases aggregate demand. So unemployment will fall. Over here, workers are in a very powerful position. They drive up real wages, which causes prices to increase in the economy, which reduces aggregate demand. Unemployment rises. Therefore, eventually, the economy is going to self-stabilize. It's going to return to the Nehru. Now then, that's fine, but it rests on certain assumptions. And there are two key assumptions. The first assumption is that wages can fall. In other words, that there is flexibility in factor markets, particularly labour markets. That labour markets are fully flexible. There's nothing stopping labour markets from working properly. And secondly, it assumes that product markets are fully flexible. That when costs are reduced, competition will lead to a reduction in the price level. And that's, in the real world, not necessarily the case. And that's where Keynesians would object to it. But if we just recap, and we'll come to that in a minute, in the next video. But if we just recap, the most talked about self-stabilisation process is whether economies can stabilise from recession, because that's the big debate between Keynesian and neoclassical economists as to what needs to be done. Because neoclassical economists are saying, well, look, under the right circumstances, economies can self-stabilise from a recession, and therefore nothing needs to be done. And what they're saying is that if there is some increase in unemployment to start with, eventually what that's going to do is it's going to lead to a decrease in wages. That's going to lead to a decrease in costs across the economy. That's going to lead to a decrease in the price level. That's going to lead to an increase in aggregate demand. And as a result, that's then going to lead back to a decrease in unemployment again, allowing the economy to recover to where it came from. And that assuming that labour markets are fully flexible and product markets are fully flexible. Therefore, in a recession, governments don't really need to do anything. They can just stand by and watch, because this process will quickly mean that the economy returns to equilibrium at the NERU.